Beneath the towering spires of Necromunda, where the upper classes bask in wealth and power, lies a labyrinthine underworld, a realm of perpetual darkness, where survival is measured not by morality, but by the ability to barter, deceive, and endure. This is the Underhive, a sprawling network of forgotten tunnels, crumbling machinery, and precarious settlements built upon the ashes of millennia. It is a place where the Imperium's iron grip loosens, giving way to chaos, opportunity, and danger. The Underhive is not merely a physical space, but a microcosm of desperation and ambition. The inhabitants, outcasts, gangers, scavengers, and fugitives forge fragile alliances and vicious rivalries in the name of survival. It is a world apart from the rigid doctrines of the Imperium, a lawless expanse where anything can be bought or sold for a price. Here, wealth is not measured in thrones alone, but in resources, power, and the currency of human lives. Whispers echo through the tunnels of a shadow economy, a marketplace so pervasive and hidden that it defies categorization. Known simply as the Black Markets of Necromunda, these clandestine networks thrive in the spaces where the light of imperial law does not reach. From stolen artifacts and forbidden Xenos technology to the trafficking of slaves and souls, the markets are a haven for the unscrupulous and the desperate alike. The black markets are not just places of trade, but hubs of influence, weaving a web of power that extends from the lowest hive scum to the distant stars. Here, the ideals of the Imperium are a distant echo, drowned out by the clinking of illicit deals and the hum of whispered secrets. To understand the allure and terror of these markets, one must delve into the very heart of Necromunda's corruption and ingenuity, a world where the line between survival and damnation is impossibly thin. In this story, we will journey into the depths of Necromunda's Underhive, uncovering the key players, historical roots, and dark mysteries that define its infamous black markets. Before we begin, let the shadows remind us. In this labyrinth of smoke and steel, every transaction carries a cost, and not all debts are paid in coin. In the shadows of Necromunda's black markets, power is not held by a single force, but distributed among an intricate web of players, each vying for dominance and survival. The marketplaces of illicit trade are defined by those who run the stalls, enforce their territories, and seek forbidden goods. Every faction, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, contributes to the thriving chaos of the Underhive's economy. These key participants range from brutal enforcers to secretive manipulators, each playing a distinct role in the machinery of corruption. At the forefront of the markets are the various gangs of Necromunda, who serve as both sellers and enforcers. The infamous House Goliath, known for their physical strength and combat prowess, often dominate the more visible and physical aspects of trade. They deal in muscle for hire, dangerous narcotics, and crude but effective weaponry. Their influence ensures that no market stall runs without their oversight in certain regions. In contrast, House Escher operates with a far more cunning approach. Specializing in chem alchemy, they dominate the sale of designer toxins and combat stims, attracting buyers who seek chemical power over raw force. Their dominance in pharmacology makes them indispensable to traders looking to augment their bodies or neutralize their enemies. Another key force within the black markets is House Delac, the enigmatic masters of subterfuge and information. While other factions deal in physical goods, Delac specializes in secrets, blackmail, and intelligence. They often sell sensitive data or orchestrate assassinations for a high price, using their knowledge to manipulate events from behind the scenes. Their presence in the markets is rarely visible, yet their influence can be felt in every dark corner of the hive. Alongside the great houses, the guilds of Necromunda wield immense influence. The cold traders operate as middlemen, facilitating the flow of Xenos artifacts and illegal off-world goods into the Underhive. Their operations are crucial to the market's appeal as they bring in treasures that cannot be found anywhere else. By contrast, the Slaver Guild profits from the sale of human lives, auctioning off entire groups of indentured servants or captured scavengers to the highest bidders. This trade in flesh forms the dark backbone of the markets, fueling countless operations that require expendable labor. The Corpse Guild plays a unique role, supplying fresh bodies for various purposes, including experimental procedures, cybernetic implants, or servitor conversions. Their grim trade in death makes them a constant presence, as few in the Underhive can afford to let resources, even corpses, go to waste. Meanwhile, the Water Guild profits from life itself, controlling access to the Underhive's most vital resource, clean water. In a place where scarcity defines survival, the Water Guild holds immense sway, dictating who thrives and who perishes. Independent traders and rogue merchants also fill the markets, each contributing their own unique wares. These individuals often operate outside the influence of the major factions, specializing in niche goods such as archaeotech fragments, relics from fallen hive sections, or forbidden tomes. Some of these traders possess ties to ancient cults or are rumored to have connections with dark forces beyond the material plane. Their stalls attract the desperate and the daring, those willing to risk their souls for a fleeting chance at power or wealth. Among the most feared participants are the bounty hunters who patrol the markets, seeking fugitives who dare to defy their contracts or debts. These mercenaries are not loyal to any single house or guild, but work for whoever pays the highest price. Their reputation for ruthlessness ensures that no one who defaults on a deal or betrays a client is ever safe within the confines of the markets. Another shadowy force within these dealings are the criminal syndicates linked to off-world powers, such as pirate lords and interstellar smugglers. These groups expand the markets beyond Necromunda's borders, feeding the demand for rare goods from across the galaxy. Their dealings introduce an element of unpredictability, as rival pirate crews and off-world cartels often clash over lucrative trade routes, causing sudden eruptions of violence that can turn a thriving market into a war zone. Finally, there are the scavenger cults, loosely organized bands that dredge the deepest ruins of Necromunda for lost relics. These scavengers often unearth dangerous artifacts, from unstable plasma cores to mysterious shards of ancient technology. Though shunned by most of the Hive's population, their findings are coveted by buyers willing to take great risks for the promise of unimaginable power. Together, these participants form a complex ecosystem of power, greed, and necessity. Each has their role in maintaining the lifeblood of the black markets, and all are bound by an unspoken rule: trust no one, for betrayal is the only constant. As the pulse of the markets continues, alliances shift and fortunes rise and fall. But one truth remains. In Necromunda, nothing is ever truly safe from the hands of those who seek to control the shadows. The Black Markets of Necromunda did not emerge from a single event, but rather as an inevitable consequence of the planet's brutal history, socio-political structures, and unrelenting cycles of exploitation. From the beginning, Necromunda was never a world of balance or equity. It was forged in industry, conquest, and greed. This legacy shaped an environment where scarcity and desperation became permanent fixtures of daily life, breeding a culture where survival often required skirting, bending, or outright shattering the laws imposed by the Imperium. Necromunda's hive cities, vast and ancient, were originally built to support the Imperium's insatiable demand for resources and weaponry. Over the centuries, these colossal cities grew so vast that they became ecosystems of their own, with millions of inhabitants living and dying within their claustrophobic confines without ever seeing the sky. In these artificial worlds of steel and decay, everything, food, water, shelter, was controlled by powerful factions who hoarded essential supplies for their own gain. As resources dwindled, an undercurrent of desperation swept through the lower levels. Legal avenues for acquiring basic necessities became insufficient or outright inaccessible to the Underhive's population. The inevitable result was the creation of illicit networks of trade. The earliest black markets began as survival mechanisms. Small groups of traders, scavengers, and desperate settlers banded together to exchange essential items. What began as a barter system soon evolved into a full-fledged economy fueled by necessity. In the depths of the Underhive, where imperial oversight was little more than a myth, these markets grew unchecked. With time, the nature of the goods exchanged in these markets shifted. Basic survival tools were gradually replaced by weapons, rare chemicals, and forbidden relics. The demand for power in a lawless world transformed simple markets into sprawling, interconnected webs of commerce that defied imperial doctrine. Another major catalyst was the unrelenting exploitation of Necromunda's workforce. As the hive cities expanded, countless laborers were sacrificed to the machines that powered the planet's industry. Entire generations were born into debt, working lifetimes in the dangerous forges, factorums, and mines without ever gaining the means to escape. The desperation of these laborers created a fertile breeding ground for black market deals, as workers sought alternative ways to secure supplies that the guilds controlled. Some made pacts with scavengers, exchanging precious heirlooms for weapons or stimulants to survive grueling shifts. Others fell into debt with criminal networks, binding themselves and their descendants to the endless cycle of servitude. In time, these arrangements became formalized as the foundations of an illegal economy. The isolation and sheer scale of the hive cities also played a critical role in the formation of the black markets. Many lower levels became inaccessible to imperial authorities and the ruling houses due to collapses, technological degradation, or hostile gang territories. These areas became perfect havens for illicit activity, where trade could occur without fear of reprisal. The deeper one ventured, the more extreme the bargains became. The inaccessibility of these areas allowed the black markets to flourish out of sight, eventually becoming institutions in their own right. Another factor was the constant influx of outsiders and exiles into Necromunda. The planet's reputation as a world of opportunity and violence drew countless fortune seekers, criminals, and rogue traders looking for profit. Many of these outsiders brought knowledge of rare off-world goods or had access to contraband that was otherwise unavailable. This influx of new resources and ideas further diversified the goods available in the markets, making them an indispensable part of life in the Underhive. The planet became a hub for everything forbidden. Xenos artifacts, stolen archaeotech, and outlawed weaponry flowed into the hives, carried by those seeking to exploit Necromunda's lack of centralized control. The Imperium's own policies also contributed to the rise of the black markets. Instead of addressing the underlying issues that plagued the planet, imperial authorities relied on brute force, deploying enforcers and servitors to crush dissent whenever uprisings erupted. This approach only fueled the population's resentment and reinforced the belief that imperial law was an oppressive yoke to be subverted at all costs. The suppression of freedom, rather than eliminating the markets, drove them deeper underground, making them more resilient and harder to dismantle. Religious and cultural factors also played a part. Necromunda's population, isolated from imperial dogma in the lower levels, developed their own superstitions, rituals, and traditions. Some groups turned to the markets to obtain relics, idols, and substances needed for their underground rites. The traders, in turn, capitalized on these beliefs, creating a secondary market fueled by faith and fear. These items became highly sought after, and their sale often blurred the line between commerce and worship. The rapid expansion of gang culture also cannot be overlooked. As territorial disputes became more frequent, rival factions sought any advantage they could secure. This drove demand for high-grade weaponry, combat drugs, and protective gear, items rarely available through legitimate means. The black markets became the natural answer to these demands, supplying everything needed to wage war in the cramped corridors of the Underhive. Ultimately, the creation and growth of the black markets were not the product of any singular event, but the inevitable result of Necromunda's brutal history and enduring inequality. The system, built on exploitation and control, fostered an environment where the need for alternative economies became not only natural, but essential. The markets became a reflection of the world that birthed them, a place where survival was paramount and every soul could be bought or sold if the price was right. The evolution of Necromunda's black markets was not a sudden surge, but a gradual process shaped by waves of economic collapse, political shifts, and the relentless influx of opportunists seeking to exploit the chaos. The market's growth can be traced through distinct phases, each marked by the rise of new players, the introduction of forbidden goods, and ever bolder defiance of imperial authority. The earliest stage of these markets began with necessity-driven barter networks. Isolated communities in the lower levels of the hive, cut off from official trade routes and exploited by the ruling classes, created informal trade hubs to exchange critical supplies such as food, water, and tools. In these primitive markets, the first whispers of power imbalance appeared, as some individuals hoarded resources to dominate the flow of goods. What started as mutual aid quickly became hierarchical, with those who controlled stockpiles becoming the first market brokers of the underhive. As these underground exchanges grew, they attracted scavengers who brought salvaged materials from the ruins of older hive sections. Archaeotech, ancient components, and power cells became the most valuable commodities, sought after by guilds, rogue traders, and aspiring gang leaders. These scavengers laid the foundation for the next phase of the black markets, one that revolved around riskier and more ambitious ventures. The second phase saw the explosion of organized crime syndicates, as gangs and ambitious guild defectors took control of the expanding markets. They formalized these hubs into protected territories, defended by armed enforcers. This period also saw the rise of the first major illicit auction sites, where rare goods, stolen from off-world shipments, raided from guild stores or crafted in secret, could be sold to the highest bidder. It was during this era that human trafficking became a lucrative trade, with entire colonies of underhive denizens being captured and sold to slaver rings for labor or experimentation. A key factor in this growth was the influx of displaced populations. Wars on other hive worlds, purges by imperial authorities, and internecine conflicts within Necromunda's own hive cities led to waves of refugees descending into the depths of the underhive. Many of these displaced individuals had lost everything, making them prime targets for exploitation. Those who managed to survive and rebuild often did so by entering the trade networks, either as merchants dealing in scavenged goods or as mercenaries offering their protection services. This influx of new blood added layers of complexity to the markets, creating entire districts that operated independently of the established powers above. In this same period, the markets became more specialized. Some hubs catered specifically to the sale of chem brews and combat stims, while others focused on weapons procurement, selling everything from improvised firearms to stolen plasma rifles. The most infamous markets dealt in knowledge and forbidden technologies. Rogue engineers and data slatesmiths sold blueprints for heretical weapon modifications and maps to long-lost manufactorum vaults. These exchanges shifted the markets from simple resource hubs to centers of innovation and danger. The next stage in the market's growth was marked by external influence. Cold traders, interstellar merchants operating outside imperial law, brought off-world contraband into Necromunda's economy, expanding the range of available goods to include Xenos relics, alien narcotics, and warp-tainted curiosities. Their arrival cemented the black market's reputation as places where the unimaginable could be bought if the price was right. This era also saw the appearance of clandestine auction events, where entire fortunes were wagered in a single evening on relics with origins too dangerous to question. The presence of cold traders also drew the attention of off-world smuggling rings and pirate crews who sought to claim a stake in Necromunda's burgeoning economy. This led to violent disputes between rival factions, with entire levels of the hive being consumed by battles over control of trade routes. These conflicts, while devastating, only served to strengthen the markets. The victors established sprawling trading hubs, fortified against outside interference and equipped with defenses designed to withstand the brute force of hive enforcers. As the markets grew in scale and reputation, they began attracting clientele from beyond the underhive. Rogue nobles from the upper spires, seeking forbidden pleasures and treasures, began to make covert visits to the lower levels, their identities obscured by hired guards and elaborate disguises. These high-paying clients fueled a new wave of luxury black market dealings, including rare Xenos pets, illicit pleasure circuits, and body augmentation surgeries banned by imperial decree. The presence of wealthy buyers further legitimized the markets, as it became clear that the underhive's shadow economy could offer goods and services that even the highest-ranking elites craved. The final phase of expansion saw the markets evolve into interconnected networks spanning multiple hive cities. Entire smuggling routes were established, running through forgotten sub-levels and secret passageways that bypassed imperial checkpoints. The creation of these routes allowed for the rapid movement of goods and people, turning isolated trade hubs into a cohesive underground economy. Some factions even created mobile markets, caravans of traders and enforcers who could set up and dismantle their operations within hours, evading imperial crackdowns. This period also marked the rise of barter systems that transcended mere currency. Certain items, rare genetic modifications, life-extending stims, or ancient relics, became so valuable that they were traded directly for favors, territories, or human lives. These transactions cemented the reputation of the black markets as places where anything could be exchanged, including power, influence, and mortal souls. Ultimately, the Black Markets of Necromunda evolved into more than just places of trade. They became institutions of necessity, rebellion, and ambition, fueled by the desperation of the underhive's population and the greed of its wealthiest patrons. Over time, the markets became so deeply embedded in the hive's culture that their influence extended beyond commerce. They shaped the very nature of survival in the underhive, defining who held power and who was destined to be consumed by the darkness. In the depths of Necromunda's underhive, there are countless tales of betrayal, ambition, and tragedy, but few stories have left as deep a scar as the infamous Night of the Crimson Bargain. It began as an ordinary trade summit, hosted in a secluded market enclave known simply as the Hollow, a cavernous chamber hidden beneath layers of collapsed tunnels and ruins. The Hollow was a neutral ground where rival factions set aside their vendettas to broker deals that would shape the fates of thousands. On that night, however, the unwritten rules of the underhive would be shattered in a way that none could have predicted. The gathering was unprecedented in scale, attracting some of the most powerful traders, gang leaders, and guild representatives. Whispers spread that the Cold Traders had arrived with a once-in-a-lifetime shipment, an artifact of immense value, rumored to be a relic from humanity's lost golden age. Speculation ran wild. Some believed it was a data core containing ancient weapon schematics, while others claimed it was a device capable of altering reality itself. Whatever the truth, its value was undeniable, and factions that had once been sworn enemies were now willing to bid fortunes or blood to claim it. The Hollow was filled with tension as negotiations commenced. Representatives from the most infamous syndicates made their opening offers: entire shipments of forbidden archaeotech, vaults of refined promethium, and crates of high-tier gene mods. But despite the mounting stakes, the Cold Traders remained silent, their leader, a figure known only as Rask, watching the chaos unfold with a detached smirk. It was clear that Rask wasn't seeking wealth alone. He wanted something more significant, something personal. When the bids reached a fever pitch, Rask finally raised his hand, silencing the room. Instead of accepting the highest offer, he stepped forward and declared that he would forego all material wealth for one single payment: the heir to a prominent guild lord, taken as collateral and sold into his possession. The crowd fell into stunned silence. It was a demand unlike anything the markets had seen before, a blatant act of personal dominance disguised as business. The guild representative, known as Lady Solvar, stood frozen, torn between outrage and desperation. She had brought her son to the negotiations as a show of strength, never imagining he would become a bargaining chip. As the gathered factions watched in horrified fascination, Solvar's mask of composure began to crack. She was one of the most feared negotiators in the hive, but this demand was beyond what she had ever faced. To refuse would be to lose everything. The cold traders would leave, and her rivals would seize the opportunity to strip her power. Yet to accept meant sacrificing her own bloodline, a decision that would stain her legacy forever. Rask's demand was more than a bid. It was a challenge that dared her to reveal the limits of her ambition. After what felt like an eternity, Solvar made her decision. With a trembling hand, she signed the contract, sealing the bargain. Her son was dragged forward, his protests drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. Rask's enforcers bound him in ceremonial chains, their expressions devoid of empathy as they led him away into the shadows. The hollow was suffused with an eerie stillness. No one dared speak. In the blink of an eye, Solvar's empire began to crumble. Her allies questioned her strength, while her enemies saw her weakness as an opportunity. Within weeks, her name, once synonymous with dominance, became a cautionary tale. However, the consequences of the Crimson Bargain did not end with Solvar's downfall. The brutal precedent set that night rippled across the Underhive, creating a new and dangerous standard. Trust, already a rare commodity, evaporated completely. Future negotiations became battlegrounds of paranoia, with factions resorting to increasingly extreme measures to ensure their survival. Trade disputes turned into assassinations, and contracts were signed with hidden clauses that condemned entire families to ruin. The black markets became more treacherous than ever, as everyone feared that they too could become a pawn in someone else's game. Rask's true intentions for Solvar's heir remained unknown. Some claimed he had been handed over to a rival empire as part of a greater plot, while others whispered of darker fates involving arcane experimentation. What was certain, however, was that Rask had made his point. In the black markets of Necromunda, power was the ultimate currency, and even the most sacred bonds could be severed for the right price. The Hollow itself became a cursed place, abandoned by all but the most reckless traders who sought to make their fortunes in the shadow of its grim legacy. Years after the Crimson Bargain, stories of that night continue to circulate, growing more twisted with each retelling. To some, it serves as a grim warning against greed and hubris. To others, it is a reminder of the brutal reality that defines Necromunda's black markets, that in the depths of the Underhive, everything has a price, and some debts can never be repaid. The existence and expansion of Necromunda's black markets have had profound and far-reaching consequences, not only within the hive cities themselves, but across the Imperium and beyond. These markets, driven by desperation, ambition, and lawlessness, have woven their influence into the very fabric of society. What was once contained within the shadow depths of the Underhive has spilled outward, altering the course of countless lives and reshaping power dynamics far beyond the planet's surface. One of the most immediate impacts of the black markets is the erosion of imperial control. The Imperium demands absolute obedience and operates on the premise of unyielding order, yet the black markets represent a direct challenge to that authority. Entire regions of Necromunda's Underhive operate outside the bounds of imperial law, creating sanctuaries where forbidden technologies and prescribed ideologies can flourish. This lack of control has emboldened not only the denizens of the Underhive, but also distant colonies and criminal networks that take inspiration from Necromunda's resilience. The planet has become synonymous with rebellion cloaked in commerce, a grim beacon for those who seek to evade imperial scrutiny. The sheer scale of illicit trade has also influenced the structure of war. Weapons and supplies acquired from the black markets have armed unregistered militias, gang warlords, and renegade guilds. In particular, access to archaeotech and exotic armaments has tipped the balance of power in conflicts where such items should never have appeared. Rogue commanders from distant systems have reportedly procured entire caches of plasma weapons and forbidden energy shields through intermediaries operating within Necromunda's markets. This proliferation of advanced weaponry has destabilized fragile regions of Imperial space, fueling insurrections and prolonged conflicts that deplete the Imperium's already strained resources. The Black Markets have also reshaped the internal hierarchies within Necromunda's hive cities. Entire guilds and noble houses have risen or fallen based on their access to illegal goods and their ability to secure off-book alliances. While the planetary governor may issue decrees aimed at quelling unrest, those with enough wealth and connections often bypass such limitations entirely by negotiating with traders who thrive in the shadows. This has created a shadow aristocracy, figures who, though technically outside the Imperium's official structure, wield immense influence due to their control over key commodities. These individuals often have more practical power than sanctioned officials, using their resources to manipulate events both within and outside the hive. Another significant effect of the black markets is the moral and psychological toll on Necromunda's population. When survival hinges on deals struck in dimly lit chambers, notions of loyalty, honor, and justice become hollow. Entire generations grow up learning that power is transactional and that everything, from food rations to human lives, is subject to negotiation. This cultural shift has made Necromunda's inhabitants fiercely pragmatic but also dangerously untrusting, reinforcing the cycle of paranoia and violence that defines life in the Underhive. As a result, some parts of Necromunda have become cultural dead zones where cooperation is seen as weakness and betrayal is an expected part of any arrangement. The economic implications extend well beyond the planet's borders. Necromunda's black markets have created unofficial trade routes that rival established imperial supply chains. Smuggling networks born from the Underhive have expanded into nearby sectors, forming corridors through which contraband, weaponry, and human cargo flow uninterrupted. These hidden routes allow for the circulation of goods that imperial authorities have deemed forbidden, undermining official sanctions and embargoes. Attempts to shut down these operations have proven largely ineffective, as the labyrinthine nature of the hive cities and the sheer number of participants make it impossible to stamp out the trade entirely. In the broader Imperium, the reputation of Necromunda as a hub of black market dealings has affected perceptions of the planet's purpose. While it remains a crucial center for industry and production, many off-world officials regard it as a poisoned well, a place where corruption festers beneath the surface. This perception has led to strained relations between Necromunda and other imperial institutions, with some factions advocating for harsher intervention, while others argue that the planet's economic output is too valuable to risk destabilization. This debate underscores the uncomfortable truth that the Imperium is often complicit in the very corruption it seeks to suppress, turning a blind eye to the black markets when it suits its needs and cracking down only when profit margins are threatened. One of the more insidious consequences of the black markets is their role in spreading heretical ideas and dangerous relics. In the pursuit of power, desperate buyers have acquired items that should have been destroyed upon discovery: warp-tainted charms, Xenos artifacts, and fragments of ancient technology that defy comprehension. These items have found their way into the hands of ambitious warlords, cult leaders, and rogue psychers, contributing to the rise of chaos cults and other dark forces. The proliferation of such relics has not only endangered Necromunda, but has also sparked purges and inquests in neighboring systems as Imperial agents scramble to contain the fallout from artifacts that should never have left the shadows. Finally, the black markets have altered the balance of secrecy and survival. In Necromunda, information is as valuable as weaponry, and the markets have become a breeding ground for espionage and subterfuge. Secrets exchanged in the Underhive can alter the fates of entire noble houses, trigger assassinations, or expose military vulnerabilities. Rogue inquisitors and mercenary spies often navigate these markets in search of forbidden knowledge, knowing that the right piece of information can be more devastating than a fleet of warships. Yet this proliferation of secrets also sows confusion and disinformation, making it increasingly difficult to discern truth from deception. In summary, the black markets of Necromunda are more than just places of illicit trade. They are engines of chaos that reverberate across the Imperium. Their existence has reshaped the planet's social, economic, and cultural landscape while destabilizing nearby systems and fueling a cycle of exploitation that seems impossible to break. In the shadows of Necromunda's labyrinthine depths, the trade of souls, secrets, and power continues unabated, leaving scars that may never heal. One of the most fascinating aspects of Necromunda's black markets is their sheer adaptability and the array of specialized operations that fuel the trade in souls, secrets, and contraband. Within the complex web of this underworld economy, certain elements have gained near-mythical status among both Hive residents and off-world observers. From the enigmatic auction events to the obscure but highly sought-after items that appear without warning, the markets are shaped by phenomena that go beyond simple trade. These unique aspects have sparked heated debates among fans and scholars of Necromunda's dark history, as many wonder how much of the truth has been exaggerated and how much remains undiscovered. One of the most notorious features of the black markets is the occurrence of the ghost auctions. These clandestine gatherings are infamous for their unpredictability. Unlike other market events, ghost auctions are not held in permanent locations. Instead, they are whispered about in coded messages, with their exact time and place revealed only hours before they commence. Participants range from hive nobility and powerful gang lords to rogue psychers and forbidden cult leaders. The secrecy surrounding these events has made them the stuff of legend. Items presented at ghost auctions are rumored to include everything from long-lost archaeotech to souls bound in crystalline prisms and artificial bodies designed to house displaced consciousnesses. Another key point of interest is the notorious practice known as soul bond trading. While slavery and forced labor are grimly common in the Underhive, soul bonding is something far more sinister. Certain esoteric factions in Necromunda believe that a person's essence, their very consciousness, can be transferred, imprisoned, or even consumed. This belief has given rise to a chilling market where individuals are not only sold for their physical labor, but also for the unique properties of their minds. It is whispered that powerful psychers and corrupt savants pay exorbitant prices to capture these mind shards and use them as tools to amplify their abilities. Stories circulate of traders who offer bespoke memory imprints, entire lifetimes of knowledge, skill, and experience, harvested from the unwilling and sold as commodities to the highest bidder. One of the most bizarre and controversial commodities in the black markets is the substance known as ash bloom. This rare chemical, reportedly derived from spores that grow in the deepest layers of hive ruins, is said to induce vivid hallucinations that feel like alternate lives. Users claim to have lived entire lifetimes within the span of hours, experiencing roles as leaders, warriors, or lost heroes. While some seek ash bloom for escapism, others believe it provides glimpses of past lives or parallel realities. The trade in ash bloom has become a fiercely contested arena, with factions clashing over control of the few known deposits. Rumors suggest that the cold traders themselves prize this substance, which has fueled speculation about its origins and true purpose. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the black markets is the prevalence of living constructs sold as commodities. These are not mere cybernetic servants or standard servitors, but grotesque fusions of biology and machine, designed to fulfill unique and often horrifying purposes. Some serve as living vaults, their internal organs modified to store contraband that no scanner can detect. Others are created as memory vessels, engineered to retain the knowledge of long-dead figures for generations. These constructs, bred in secrecy by rogue tech priests and bioalchemists, fetch astronomical prices among those desperate to acquire what cannot be preserved by any other means. The legends of the Midnight Couriers are another frequent topic of speculation. These elusive figures are believed to operate within the deepest shadows of the hive, ferrying forbidden items between the black markets and clients across the galaxy. Unlike standard smugglers, midnight couriers are said to have access to ancient unmapped routes, some theorized to be warp-adjacent corridors, that allow them to bypass both Imperial patrols and hostile territories. Whether they are an actual faction or merely a myth used to explain impossible trades, their legend endures in stories told around the market's hidden fires. A recurring topic among Necromunda's inhabitants is the presence of auction engines, archaic, semi-sentient machines that are said to run entire trade hubs without any human oversight. According to Underhive folklore, these machines once belonged to a lost age of technological mastery and now oversee complex transactions that occur too quickly for human comprehension. Some believe that the auction engines record every deal ever made, and that somewhere in the depths of Necromunda, a vault holds the compiled contracts of countless souls who have unknowingly signed away their futures. Others claim that these machines are cursed, their operations driven by corrupted intelligences that cannot be shut down. A final topic of fascination within the community is the whispered existence of the Black Script, a legendary codex that supposedly contains the unwritten rules of the black markets. According to tales passed from trader to trader, this script details the origins of the markets, the identities of their original founders, and the hidden laws that bind all participants, no matter their power or influence. Many dismiss the Black Script as a myth, a convenient excuse used to justify betrayals or enforce unspoken traditions. However, there are those who believe it is real and that its knowledge could unravel the entire structure of illicit trade on Necromunda. Some speculate that powerful factions have spent lifetimes searching for it, hoping to either claim its power or ensure that its secrets remain buried. The allure of these unique aspects lies not only in their mystery, but in the way they blur the line between fact and legend. They are the stories that fuel hope, dread, and ambition in equal measure, shaping the perception of the black markets as more than just places of commerce. To those who dwell in Necromunda's shadows, the truth behind these tales may be irrelevant. What matters is the belief that in the depths of the Underhive, beyond the reach of law or light, anything is possible, for the right price. Among the many names whispered in the depths of Necromunda's black markets, a few stand out for their audacity, ambition, and notoriety. These individuals, whether feared, revered, or pitied, shaped the history of the Underhive's dark economy in ways that are still felt long after their stories ended. Each figure represents the many facets of these illicit markets: power, tragedy, and the thin line between survival and ruin. One of the most infamous figures associated with the black markets is Silas Cordrake, known as the Hollow King. A former cold trader who rose from obscurity, Silas was known for his almost supernatural ability to secure artifacts that should never have existed in mortal hands. He was driven by an obsession with uncovering the secrets of humanity's lost past and had an unrivaled network of informants, spies, and smugglers spread across Necromunda and the void beyond. Cordrake's success was built on his ruthless pragmatism. He would betray even his closest allies if it meant gaining access to an ancient relic or forbidden technology. Despite his wealth and influence, Silas was haunted by his pursuit. Some say that his mind began to unravel after acquiring a series of cryptic relics from a forgotten vault deep in the ash wastes. His crew began to vanish, one by one, under mysterious circumstances, and rumors spread that Cordrake had become cursed by the very knowledge he sought. His final appearance at a ghost auction ended in chaos when he bid not with thrones or goods, but with the promise of his own life. No one knows who claimed his offer or what happened to him afterward, but his disappearance left a vacuum in the markets that led to bloody power struggles among rival factions. Another infamous name tied to the markets is Elise Tharks, a rogue noble from Necromunda's upper spires who became known as the Lady of Broken Chains. Elise was originally a daughter of privilege, destined to inherit the vast fortunes of House Tharks. However, her fate took a dark turn when she was betrayed by her own family and sold into the markets as part of a scheme to erase her from succession. Tharks was forced into servitude, but rather than accept her fate, she rose through sheer force of will. Using her wit and charisma, she manipulated her captors, sowing discord and turning rival factions against one another. Elise eventually secured her freedom by orchestrating a bloody rebellion within a slaver outpost and took revenge against her former family by outbidding them at a public auction for the very assets they had sacrificed her for. She transformed her fortune into a symbol of resistance, becoming a prominent figure in the fight against human trafficking within the Underhive. While some praised her as a liberator, others saw her as a vengeful manipulator who used her crusade to further her own goals. Regardless of the truth, her story became a rallying cry for those seeking freedom in the shadowed depths, while her enemies cursed her name as the Iron Phoenix that rose from the ashes of betrayal. A far more enigmatic figure in the Black Market's history is Orlin Ketch, a cipher among ciphers who was nicknamed the Flesh Broker. Unlike most traders, Ketch's dealings were exclusively in living assets, captives, indentured servants, and genetically modified laborers bred for dangerous work. His reputation was built on discretion. Those who needed specialized personnel came to Ketch with their darkest requests, confident that their secrets would never be exposed. Ketch was described as unnervingly calm, with an unshakable demeanor and an eerie ability to anticipate his clients' needs before they spoke. However, Ketch's rise to power was fueled by a personal vendetta. His own family had once been sold in the markets after losing a debt war, and he alone survived. His calm exterior masked a ruthless desire for revenge. He kept meticulous records of every transaction, not just for profit, but to dismantle the very networks that had destroyed his life. In his final days, Ketch orchestrated a masterstroke, delivering falsified ledgers to the planetary enforcers, triggering the downfall of a dozen slaver guilds in one night. His disappearance after that event led many to believe he had finally achieved his vengeance, though no one knows if he escaped or was silenced by the forces he betrayed. Another key figure in the history of Necromunda's black markets is Vile Korshar, a former bounty hunter turned mercenary king. Vile was notorious for his dual reputation as both a ruthless hunter and a collector of debts that could never be paid. His involvement in the markets began with a simple bounty, a minor gang lord who had fled into the depths after defaulting on a massive weapons deal. Korshar pursued his prey across the lower hive, eventually cornering him in the ruins of an abandoned auction site. Instead of killing his mark outright, Korshar offered the gang lord a choice: serve him or be sold at the next market as payment for his failures. From that point forward, Korshar began building his own empire, forcing captured enemies into lifetime contracts of servitude and using them as his agents. His influence grew until he controlled vast portions of the black markets, particularly in human trafficking and illegal arms sales. Yet Korshar's legacy was defined not just by power, but by fear. He was infamous for his brutal enforcement of loyalty and was said to wear trophies taken from those who betrayed him, a constant reminder to anyone who considered defiance. Korshar's rise came to a brutal end when he encountered a faction known as the Shroud Syndicate, a secretive guild of information brokers who trafficked in knowledge rather than flesh. After a failed negotiation turned into a deadly ambush, Korshar was reportedly captured and subjected to the very fate he had forced upon others. His fate became a cautionary tale among market regulars, a symbol of how no one, no matter how powerful, was ever truly safe from betrayal. These figures, with their strengths and flaws, ambitions and downfalls, have become part of Necromunda's living myth. Their stories are reminders of what can be gained and lost in the treacherous halls of the black markets, where fortunes are built on desperation and shattered by greed. Whether remembered as liberators, monsters, or legends, they all left indelible marks on a world that never forgets those who dared to gamble their souls for power. The Black Markets of Necromunda have always been shrouded in mystery and speculation, giving rise to numerous unanswered questions and controversial theories. These markets are not merely places of trade, but sprawling ecosystems of secrets and shadows, where myths and half-truths intertwine with reality. Among the most hotly debated topics are the origins of certain artifacts, the identities of shadowy figures who influence events from the background, and the true extent of the market's power beyond the hive world itself. One of the most enduring mysteries is the question of how the black markets acquire their most exotic and forbidden wares. While it is well known that cold traders and rogue smugglers bring off-world goods into Necromunda, there are persistent rumors of more sinister sources. Some claim that there are ancient vaults buried deep beneath the hives, filled with relics from a time long forgotten. These vaults, if they exist, are said to predate the hive cities themselves and contain technology so advanced they border on sorcery. Despite the many expeditions undertaken by treasure hunters, no verified vault of this nature has ever been discovered, leading some to believe that these stories are deliberate fabrications meant to hide the true suppliers of forbidden technology. Another debated topic is the so-called Echo Market, a market that is rumored to exist outside the physical constraints of Necromunda. Unlike the traditional hubs of trade found in the Underhive, the Echo Market is said to be accessible only to those who possess specific knowledge or artifacts. Some believe it to be a metaphor for a hidden network of elite traders who operate above the petty conflicts of the lower levels, while others speculate that it could be an actual location displaced in time or space. According to legend, those who find the Echo Market can access goods and information far beyond what any known trader offers, but only at a cost that cannot be measured in wealth alone. The mystery surrounding the Obsidian Codex is another point of fascination for many who study the markets. This mythical tome is said to contain the original contracts and pacts that established the first iterations of Necromunda's black markets. The Codex is rumored to list not only the names of the founding factions, but also the binding oaths they took to ensure the market's survival against imperial purges. If such a document exists, it could hold the key to unraveling the power structures that have kept the markets alive for centuries. However, no one has ever provided credible evidence of its existence, and many believe it to be nothing more than a convenient myth used to justify the market's resilience. A particularly grim theory revolves around the phenomenon of vanishing enclaves. Entire trade hubs have reportedly disappeared overnight, leaving no trace of their existence. These vanishings have been attributed to everything from imperial purges and catastrophic collapses to internal betrayals. However, some believe that these enclaves are not destroyed, but taken, captured by a force that operates in secret. This has led to speculation about the existence of a rival organization that preys upon the black markets, either to hoard their resources or to enforce a brutal form of control. No concrete evidence has ever surfaced to confirm these suspicions, but the disappearances continue to fuel paranoia among traders and merchants. Another controversial topic is the identity of the figure known only as the Eben Ghost. According to whispers, this shadowy individual is not a single person, but a mantle passed down through generations. The Eben Ghost is said to be responsible for orchestrating some of the most audacious deals in Necromunda's history, including the infamous sale of an entire manufactorum district. Theories about the ghost's true nature vary wildly. Some believe it to be a cabal of merchants who use the persona to maintain anonymity, while others claim that the ghost is a revenant from a bygone era, eternally bound to the markets. Whatever the truth, the mere mention of the Eben Ghost is enough to instill both awe and dread among those who frequent the markets. Perhaps the most debated question is the role of the Adeptus Mechanicus in the black markets. While the Mechanicus is outwardly aligned with the Imperium's laws, their obsession with reclaiming lost technology makes it difficult to believe they have not, at some point, engaged in secret dealings. Some suspect that rogue sects of the Mechanicus have not only tolerated the markets, but actively supplied them with archaeotech in exchange for rare data shards and schematics. The existence of cybernetic constructs that bear the unmistakable hallmarks of Mechanicus design further fuels these suspicions. However, any inquiry into these connections is met with staunch denials and swift retribution, leading to even more speculation about how deep these ties may go. There is also the question of how much of the Black Market's operations are influenced by forces beyond the material realm. While most traders are pragmatic survivalists, rumors persist of cults and secret societies that use the markets as conduits for their own agendas. The appearance of artifacts with strange, reality-warping properties has led some to wonder whether these items are truly relics of forgotten human ingenuity or something far more dangerous. Some believe that the markets have become unwitting gateways for malevolent forces that seek to manipulate the hive from within. This theory is often dismissed as fear-mongering, but the unsettling nature of some goods sold within the markets lends it an air of plausibility. Lastly, one of the most unsettling questions is whether the black markets can ever truly be eradicated. Despite countless purges and crackdowns, they continue to thrive, adapting to every attempt to suppress them. This resilience has led some to theorize that the markets are not merely a product of greed and desperation, but a fundamental part of Necromunda's social structure, an organic response to the oppression and inequality imposed by the Imperium. If this is true, it raises a disturbing implication: that the markets are not just places of trade, but a reflection of the hive world's deepest truths, born from a system that forces its people to barter their very lives for survival. These unanswered questions and theories keep the legend of the black markets alive in the minds of underhive dwellers and distant scholars alike. Whether they are grounded in fact or fiction, they fuel the sense that Necromunda's shadow economy is more than just a series of hidden bazaars. It is a living, breathing enigma whose mysteries may never be fully unraveled. The long-term consequences of Necromunda's black markets extend far beyond the confines of its hive cities, weaving their influence into the broader tapestry of the Imperium. As these illicit networks grow and evolve, their impact threatens to reshape the economic, political, and military landscapes of both the planet and the wider galaxy. The question is not whether these markets will affect the future. It is how far-reaching those effects will be, and whether the Imperium can withstand the inevitable fallout. One potential consequence is the gradual decentralization of imperial power within Necromunda's hives. The more the population becomes reliant on alternative systems of trade and survival, the less they adhere to imperial doctrine. This could lead to an eventual breakdown in loyalty, as entire sectors of the hive increasingly see the black markets as the only viable means of sustenance and empowerment. If this trend continues unchecked, the imperial authorities could face widespread insurrections that they are ill-equipped to quell. Instead of dealing with isolated gangs and criminal factions, the enforcers may find themselves battling entire communities that have come to view imperial control as irrelevant, or even parasitic. On a larger scale, the proliferation of black market goods could destabilize regions far beyond Necromunda. The smuggling routes established by these traders connect multiple worlds, allowing contraband to flow freely between planets. If powerful but unauthorized technologies and Xenos artifacts continue to spread, local warlords and rogue planetary governors may gain access to weapons and tools that rival those of sanctioned imperial forces. This could lead to a rise in secessionist movements, where isolated systems, emboldened by their newfound power, attempt to break free from imperial rule. The Imperium's already overstretched military could be pushed to its breaking point, forced to fight an increasing number of localized rebellions fueled by goods purchased in the shadows. Moreover, the black markets could inadvertently accelerate the rise of criminal empires that surpass even the most dangerous underhive gangs. As trade networks become more sophisticated and expand across the stars, they may give rise to powerful organizations capable of rivaling established rogue trader dynasties. These criminal cartels, equipped with wealth and influence gathered from countless worlds, could become a significant threat to imperial governance. Their ability to bribe officials, fund insurgencies, and command private armies would make them difficult, if not impossible, to eliminate entirely. This new class of interstellar crime lords could reshape the balance of power, forcing the Imperium to divert precious resources away from external threats to deal with the chaos within its own borders. Another potential outcome is the spread of knowledge that was once tightly controlled by the Imperium. The black markets have already become a conduit for information, including heretical texts, forgotten schematics, and prescribed lore. As more individuals gain access to this forbidden knowledge, the risk of cultural fragmentation increases. Entire populations may become influenced by ideologies and beliefs that challenge imperial orthodoxy, leading to the formation of cults, rebel factions, and independent enclaves. Some of these groups may turn to radical innovation, creating weapons, constructs, or chemical agents that the Adeptus Mechanicus would condemn as heresy. While such developments could potentially lead to technological breakthroughs, they also pose a significant existential threat if these creations spiral out of control. On the other hand, there is an argument that the continued existence of the black markets could lead to unforeseen resilience within the human population of Necromunda and beyond. The markets serve as an unregulated crucible of adaptation and survival, pushing traders, scavengers, and mercenaries to develop new methods of problem-solving and resourcefulness. In a galaxy defined by endless war and scarcity, this harsh environment could forge individuals capable of enduring conditions that would break most loyal Imperial citizens. Some speculate that the Underhive's resourcefulness may become an unintended asset in future conflicts, as its inhabitants prove capable of outlasting both their enemies and the Imperium's own expectations. However, this resilience comes at a steep moral cost. The normalization of human trafficking, soul trading, and the sale of entire communities as laborers undermines the basic humanity that the Imperium claims to protect. Over time, these practices could erode the social fabric of the hive cities to the point where compassion and solidarity are replaced entirely by predation and exploitation. If this cultural degradation spreads, even loyal imperial institutions may become complicit in the systemic commodification of human life, turning a blind eye to atrocities in exchange for power or survival. Another long-term concern is the potential for outside forces to exploit the black markets for their own agendas. The markets are already rife with rumors of agents acting on behalf of warbands, rogue inquisitors, and even more sinister entities seeking to destabilize the planet. If these rumors hold any truth, the markets could become an unwitting gateway for far larger conflicts. A particularly bleak possibility is that chaos cults and Xenos infiltrators could use the markets to introduce insidious influences into Necromunda's population, creating sleeper cells or sowing dissent that could erupt into full-scale uprisings when the Imperium least expects it. One final haunting prospect is that the black markets could grow so deeply entrenched in the societal structure of Necromunda that they become impossible to remove without destroying the hive cities themselves. If the networks of trade and influence extend too far, they could become indistinguishable from the everyday functions of the hive. In such a scenario, any attempt to purge the markets could trigger economic collapse and humanitarian disaster, forcing the Imperium into an untenable position where they must either tolerate the markets or risk the total destabilization of one of their most productive worlds. In the long run, the black markets of Necromunda present a paradox. They are both a symptom of the Imperium's failings and a reflection of humanity's unbreakable will to survive by any means necessary. Whether they lead to innovation or destruction, rebellion or resilience, their influence cannot be contained by mere declarations of law or force of arms. As the hive cities continue to expand and adapt, The shadows of the markets will grow with them, carving out new spaces where ambition, desperation, and greed collide. In this unforgiving world, the only certainty is that the cost of survival will continue to be paid in blood, secrets, and souls.